Hi there, my name is Stella O'Malley and I'm a psychotherapist based in Offaly. And I'm very happy to bring this presentation to you about nurturing our sense of well-being during difficult times, because times are very difficult at the moment. We're being kind of given a huge amount of bad news very often. And as a result, an awful lot of people are feeling very stressed, very pressurized, anxious, and in a way, I say our weak point comes out. The people who are inclined to overeat, overeat. The people who are inclined towards panic, panic. The people who drink too much, drink too much. We all have our weak spot, and it's coming out hard and fast at the moment. I really see it in my clinical work, and I see it with people who contact me. And it's something we have to be very, very careful of, because when our well-being cracks, everything really goes with it. This is brought to you by Tipperary County Council, and it's an initiative about keeping well. It's a Keep Well campaign, thanks to Healthy Ireland, an initiative of the Government of Ireland with funding from the Healthy Ireland Fund and the Sláinte Care Fund, and it's delivered by Pubble. And I'm very appreciative that there are funds like this and that there are initiatives like this in Ireland, because some countries don't have them, and some countries really, really suffer with their well-being. Um, I have a lot of clients from different places, and it's really noticeable where well-being isn't quite as protected as other places, and as a result, people do, on some level, crack. So if you have a look at what are the five essentials of well-being, you'll see that it's an interdependent relationship. And it's an interdependent relationship with these five elements. First, your career, how you occupy your time. It doesn't have to be a high-flying career. It doesn't have to be an amazing career. What it does need to be is something, a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose and competency in how you occupy your time. I know I was particularly bad with the early years of my babies when my children were very baby years. And I knew I wasn't good at the whole routine and getting them down at the right time and getting the food and all of that. I found it really, really difficult. And I didn't have a sense of competency. And so I had meaning, I had purpose, but I didn't have a sense of competency. I couldn't keep up. It wasn't my strength. And as a result, I felt very derailed. And I remember giving a talk similar to this, but it was in real life. And it was to a group of men who were ex-prisoners. And they had had a really difficult life. And I could see one of them nodding when I said, we all need a sense of purpose, competency, and meaning in our lives. And I knew he had one from the way he nodded. It was quite clear that he knew what that was in his life. And I asked him, I said, what was it? Because I know I'm a good father. And so it's a very good story that shows it doesn't really matter what you're doing, because we can find meaning and purpose and competency where we find it. So one person is great at fathering or mothering or the baby years or the teenage years. Somebody else is brilliant at the office. Somebody else is brilliant in keep being a good friend. You need it. And so how you spend your time is really important, especially during lockdown or around the restrictions, because you might be finding things are harder to find your sense of competency, but it's essential that you find it. Now, you also need to have some sort of some sort of strong quality relationships. Many people who come to me say, oh, I have a great friend over in Galway, but I never see her. And I have a friend down the road, but actually he's very busy, so I never see him. And I do have my best friend who lives in Canada. And because of geography, we never see each other. So I end up spending most of my time with my in-laws and my neighbors, and I don't like them. That's not really a happy place. And so we have to be very careful about who are our social relationships. Yeah, you have to spend time with your relations, and you do have to spend time with your neighbors, perhaps, but you also make sure that you're protective of yourself so that you spend time with people who love you, people who appreciate you, who love you for who you are, and who you love for who they are. And it's very important that we maintain that and protect that. So that's our social relationships. Then a sense of financial competency is very difficult for some people. Charles Dickens had that great quote where if you're spending basically £1 too much every week, you'll feel incompetent. That was back in the old 19th century kind of. But the point is, if you're spending a little bit too much every week, you'll feel out of control. If you're spending a little bit too little every week, you'll feel very competent and in control. And it's as simple as that. It's very much similar to like whether you're putting on weight or not. If you're eating a little bit too much every day, you will put on weight. If you're eating a little bit too little, you will lose weight. And it's real maths here that's happening. And it's really important we attend to it. So be conscious of your financials. It's a very worrying time, but you have to think, have I a sense of competency? And if I don't, do I need to contact MAPS? Do I need to get some sort of structure into my finances? Look at the monster under the rug, because there is probably a monster under the rug if you feel a sense of incompetency with your finances. It's a case of taking it all out and looking at all the finances and figuring out what's the best way forward. And then we need well-being around our physical health. Some people find it going for a walk is fabulous. Some people hate it. Some people love going for a run. Some people like doing their exercises or just having a vigorous way of, attending to the housework and things like that. We do need to be stretched on some level physically, or we'll kind of turn very slothful and very lazy. And so it's quite important that you do look after that. And the last one is a sense of community, a sense of engagement in the area that you're in. And that might be joining a few local Facebook groups, a kind of a sense of you're part of something. So you can go somewhere where everybody knows your name and knows where you live and knows what you're about. Otherwise, you can feel isolated. And that they say no man is an island, and it's true. Because if we try to live in an island life, maybe up a mountain or something, we feel isolated. The very odd person can do it. Most people feel a very deep sense of isolation after some time. And so you need to feel connected with your community. And you do that by joining things. And if that doesn't work out, you join something else and you keep going until you get that sense of community. If you look at this, as I said before, I do have, clients from different places in the world, and it's really noticeable how, you know, maybe, Healthy Ireland might be looking after us with initiatives, but some places don't. And so if you look at the well-being gap in the US, only 28% well, no, I shouldn't say only, 28% are thriving in none of the elements that I've just described. So in all of the 5 elements, which is, purpose, social, financial, community, and physical, 28% of people in America feel like they're thriving in none of those elements. Only 22% only have one element that they're happy in. Maybe it's their career, maybe it's their finances. And if you look at the bottom one, 7% think they're thriving in all 5 elements. And we need them for our sense of well-being. So the obvious kind of corollary to that would be 7% of people in America are feeling like they're thriving in their well-being. And that's not enough. So you need to look after yourself. If an awful lot of people are unhappy, that doesn't mean you join them. It means you become more careful about your well-being and realize I need to be protective. I need to look after myself. I need to figure out what I need. And one thing I'd really like to say to you is not beat yourself up for needing what you need. Some people need an awful lot of social contact. Some people need an awful lot of physical exercise. And an awful lot of clients give out to themselves, I find, about what they need, rather than just getting what they need. You don't see a baby give out to himself about what he needs. If a baby's very physical, they are very physical. If they need a lot of cuddles, they get their cuddles. And in a way, we put values on this when we're older and we decide we shouldn't need so much contact with the community or we shouldn't need good friendships. We do need them. You need what you need. And the sooner you make your peace at what you need and you go about getting it, the happier you'll be in the long run and the less needy you'll be because you go about getting what you need. So this is a cute little kind of analysis of where we go emotionally. Some of us are drowners and some of us are blockers. As it says there, we drowners, I'd be a drowner. We drown in difficult situations. We drown in our fears and our judgments. Our mind becomes like a hurricane with powerful emotional, but not necessarily true statements. And so the drowner ratchets up the emotions in a very high degree, while a blocker pushes through and they block it out. They might block it out with force of will, with the help of work, social media, shopping, food, alcohol. Avoid as much as possible and think you're relying on your mental strength. And very often drowners are married to blockers. I'm a drowner married to a blocker, and it's quite noticeable. Like the blocker might, be chewing on a slice of pizza and saying, don't worry about it, it'll relax, while the drowner's going up and up and up. And the drowner thinks that they need to ratchet up the emotion so that the blocker will finally see how important the issue is. The blocker, on the other hand, thinks they have to keep on chilling and relaxing so that the drowner will realize that they need to relax. Exactly the wrong response both of them are giving. What actually needs to happen is the drowner needs to come down a little bit and the blocker needs to come up a little bit. And now we're both closer to reality. And what you're looking for and what you're seeking is reality. To drown in the situation and say it's all horrendous isn't true, and it's not accurate and it's not helpful. And to block it out and pretend you don't need to attend to it isn't true and it's not accurate and it's not helpful. And so it's very important if you're a drowner or you tend towards drowning. Now you might tend towards drowning in work and block out your personal life, or the opposite way around. Blockers in the end drown. So they block it out, block it out, block it out, and then lose it. So that's the kind of common kind of formula there. But most of the time is spent blocking it out. You might suddenly have this urge to go on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. And I'd say, what are you blocking? What's the emotion that drives you to seek your phone and go on social media? Very often it's very interesting for your well-being to figure out, I suddenly felt overwhelmed by my money concerns and I dived for social media. Well, there, immediately I would say, look at the monster under the rug, have a look at your finances, because that's what really worried you. And while social media helped for a moment, it's putting a plaster on the wound. It's not really helping the wound. It's not, in the larger sense of the word, helping the wound. And so the more we know about our brain, the more we can be comfortable in our well-being. And the back of the head is where our emotional brain is, and the front of the head is the neocortex. And the emotional brain, it's fast and it's furious, it's powerful, filled with strong and emotional statements. It's very fast, very strong, and it's the stupidest part of our brain. While the neocortex is slow, it's analytical, it's contemplative, it's very unsure of itself, it's uncertain, it's like a chess player or a mathematician. Will we do this? Perhaps we should do that. And that's the wisest part of our brain. And so for you to protect your well-being and your sense of kind of balance, you need to move your emotional brain, move into your wise brain as much as possible, because the emotional brain will charge around with emotional, powerful, but not necessarily true statements. And some of us get into a habit of being in our emotional brain because we feel powerful and we enjoy the feeling of power. And so we're kind of charging from one kind of drama to the next. And you could say that makes life exciting, and it does, but it also makes life very exhausting. And you might, for the swings of the highs of the power, you probably get swings of low, despair, defeatism, overwhelm, and things like that. And so that's why you need to be careful of those emotional dramas that you might go from one drama to the next. Instead, start to build up habits, mental habits of a more even keel, where you're rocking along, life is interesting, but it's not emotionally overwhelming. And that's what they've discovered in the last 20 or so years in neuroscience. And they didn't really know it before, that we're really bundles of mental habits. And the more we do of something, the easier it is for our brain to do it. And every time we do something, we do it in a habitual way, we are setting down a neural path. And the neural path becomes easier and easier for the brain to travel. And the brain travels down the easy paths. And so when they realized this with neuroscientists, they suddenly realized, oh my God, all these people in psychology and psychotherapy lying on couches talking about their terrible childhood mightn't be the best thing for them. Now, it could be, depending on the childhood and depending on the context. But very often, complaining all the time generally isn't great for us. And complaining suggests there's something you need to do in your life. And if you had to bandage up your mouth and you weren't allowed to complain for a month, what action would you take? Because very much complaining keeps us in the status quo. And if we weren't allowed to complain, we would have to act, because we wouldn't have the release, we wouldn't have the relief, and therefore we'd change. Now, some things in life are just not changeable and we have to accept them. And that great prayer from AA, from Alcoholics Anonymous, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's a really powerful 3 lines. It really is, because it says it all about what we need to accept in life and what we don't. But complaining sometimes makes us stay in the status quo. And sometimes we need to act. And it's up to us to have the wisdom to figure out, when can we act? When do we need to accept? So what they realized is, wow, the more you do of something, the easier it is for your brain to do it. So the more we complain, the easier it is to complain. The more we worry, the easier it is to worry. The good news is, the more we're in good form, the easier it is to be in good form. There's a tragedy in that, insofar as people who've had very hard lives are used to being in very dark places in their brain. And people who've had very easy lives are used to being happy. And that's fundamentally unfair. And one of many, many, many of life's unfairnesses is that fact. There is good news, however, because if you've had a very hard life, but things are okay now, you can practice your way into well-being. All you need to do is commit to having more well-being in your life. And then it will, by nature, you will less look for the negative, and you'll become more accustomed to looking for the positive, purely by practicing it. And it was an extraordinary kind of realization when they realized that. So as it says there, the more we work too much, the easier it is to work too much. The more we feel happy, the easier it is to feel happy. I know when I first met my husband, he used to give these huge portions. And the first couple of years, I was like, these are massive. Now I just pick up my knife and fork and in I go, because I'm used to it. I've got the habit. And so that's how, if you want to know how did you drink so much, if you went to college when in your student or in your young adult days, you practiced. That's how you did it. You did it through practice. And the more you want to feel happy, the more you commit to feeling happy by giving yourself a diet, by making sure there's well-being in your life. Maybe you might watch a funny program every day. Maybe you might commit to having a laugh on the phone with your friend. I don't know what it is that gives you a sense of well-being. Maybe, nice clean sheets on the bed more regularly, or whatever it is that gives you that lovely sense of well-being. You do it often. You practice it. So your brain becomes accustomed to looking for the pleasure in life instead of looking for the worry. It's a habit, mental habits that we need to be very careful of. As the neuroscientist Donald Hebb says there, neurons that fire together, wire together. And the more you can feel conscious of, what am I actually wiring? Am I getting better or am I getting worse? Are my habits becoming more positive or becoming more negative? Am I happier from this time last year than this time this year? Where am I going with this? Am I getting better or worse? It's a key question. And I discuss it in my book, Fragile, which is about anxiety and well-being and coping strategies. So Dr. Richard Davidson, the neuroscientist, he came up with this very intelligent quote, I think anyway. He says, well-being is a skill fundamentally no different than learning to play the cello. If one practices the skills of well-being, one will get better at it. And so if everybody who's listening to this was given a cello, and they were told to practice the cello for 365 days, maybe 15 minutes a day, no more than that, but you had to practice it every day. Within a year, if I came back in a year and asked you, how are you with the cello? If you practiced it for 15 minutes every day, you would be significantly better than you are now. So I don't know what low bar you're from. You might be actually quite happy, or you might be really in a dark place. If you practice well-being every single day for the next year as a commitment, you will feel better and it will impact. And that's great news, because I'm really giving you a lovely diet of, do something pleasurable every day. Make sure it's healthy, like drinking vodka probably isn't the healthiest thing if it does make you feel good, but something that's pleasant and healthy. That's all. That's the only two criteria, pleasant and helpful and healthy. Then you will feel better after a certain level of time. They often say 66 days is enough to keep a habit down. And this is a nice habit. As it says there, brain plasticity is a two-way street. Our brains are plastic. They move. They're malleable. So when you take a picture of a brain scan like that, it's a picture of a moving train, because it will change. And it's either getting the neural pathways that are either getting happier or getting more stressed. And as it says there, brain plasticity is a two-way street. It's just as easy to generate negative changes as positive ones. And that's why I'm here giving this talk, to remind people, generate the positive changes if at all possible. As Norman Deutsch says there, and he wrote a lot about the brain and well-being and brain plasticity, nothing speeds. This really reminds me of people who are in a funk, people who are stuck. And I often have clients who feel stuck. Might be because of the world at large at the moment, or it might be because of their own personal situation. And it says there, nothing speeds brain atrophy more than being immobilized in the same environment. The monotony undermines our dopamine and attentional systems crucial to our brain plasticity. So doing nothing every day, being stuck, fries your brain, literally. It atrophies your brain. And so you have to be very careful when you're stuck to do something different. Doesn't matter what it is, do something different to lift yourself out of the stuckness. If I was to say, the biggest threat to people's well-being would be stuckness. They can get stuck in anxiety, stuck in a certain way of thinking, stuck in an addiction. Being stuck is really, really detrimental to our well-being. So, if you look at these emotional needs, we all have emotional needs, and it's very like the essential, elements of well-being. We have physical needs, but these are the emotional needs. So, our physical needs is you need enough sleep, you need enough food, you need enough rest, you need water. We also have emotional needs, and it's not said often enough. So, the emotional needs, for example, and these were done, let's say, by William Glasser, the American psychologist, but there's lots of different emotional needs. People have argued what exactly they are, but they're in and around those five needs. Some people say they're seven, and they divide it a little bit more detailed. They're in and around this, and these are a good working kind of system. Have you got love, belonging, and connection? That's your sense of community, your feeling. Do you feel connected with people in your social relationships? Are you recognized? Are you valued? Do you feel safe? The second point. Some people have a very high need for safety, and so they might need, pension plans, they might need locks on the door, they might need healthy eating. Depends on where your feeling for safety goes. While some people need a real high need for freedom, they need to do their own thing. They don't particularly like rules, they don't particularly like authority. They need to be able to feel free. Some people have a high need for status and value and recognition. That means they need to keep dancing so that people will tell them they're great. And some people have a high need. And if you have that need, make your peace with it and make sure you get the recognition. There's no point in saying, I shouldn't have that need. If you have it, you have it. And you're better off going about and getting it. And the last one, we all have a need for fun or challenge. Some people very high, you need to keep challenge. And so you could find that when you're stuck or when you're in a boring situation, you start really melting. And be careful of that if that's the truth for you. When we go through pain, and every one of us is, so we're toddling along on that line with the sense of well-being, and then something happens, and we can come out of it stronger, or we can come out of it weaker, or we can come out of it the very same. If you go to a psychotherapist, ideally it would be better if you could come out of it stronger. As Carl Jung said, great psychologist Carl Jung, the right way to wholeness is made up of fateful detours and wrong turnings. Life is full of fateful detours and wrong turnings. We go right, we go wrong. And, this is where we have to be very careful and think about when you have something awful happen to you, that you give yourself some time and say, this is a bad blow, but I'm going to give myself some help. I'm going to get myself the right support. I'm not going to beat myself up in the middle of it. And I'm going to get out, maybe even stronger than I ever was before. Even though I'm devastated by it, I might have better bonds. Now, sometimes you'll come out weakened because it's such a heavy blow and you've been given a very heavy card and life isn't fair. And sometimes you think, I will come out of this weaker, but I'll come out of it. And life will continue to roll on. The world will keep turning, the sun will rise again. And so that's where you need your philosophy and your philosophical kind of, why are we here? Why am I here? What's the point of me? Because if you don't have that, you've kind of got nothing when a really hard event happens. So when something really difficult happens, and I don't know who I'm speaking to, but I could be speaking to people who've had really tragic events happen. And that's where you have to really look to, we don't know what we're made of, really. We don't know, what where we've come from. We don't know where we're going. We've so much unknowns about this world that you can turn to philosophy and religion in times of very big darkness, because they can be a comfort to you, because you can realize there's bigger stuff out there than we know. And, like Hamlet said it in Shakespeare to Horatio, that, there's more in heaven and earth than we can know of in our philosophy. I've made a mess of that quote, but you know what I mean? There's more in heaven and earth than we know of in our philosophy. And, there really is. There is something much bigger out there, and we don't know what it is. And the more we can think of the larger perspective when terrible things happen, the more we can come to some sense of understanding of how to continue with our life. and make sure you get the support you need, because some people are given such hard times. Epictetus, the guy in front of us in the screen here, he's a very good example. He was born a slave, 2,000 years ago. He was lame. He was a cripple. He wrote some great writing, and really he realized that it doesn't matter, as it says, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And he realized it doesn't matter, because some terrible things happened to Epictetus, but he realized that actually it's not about the cards you're given, it's how you play them. it he was given a terrible life, and he built the Stoic philosophy upon that life that he was given. And his writings, they were phenomenal, phenomenal, wise writings. And he overcame the difficulties that he was given in his life, and he managed a kind of a sense of well-being, not through looking for happiness, but through having a calm and dispassionate kind of angle on life, so that you could endure it, but you could also kind of knock a sense of peace out of each day, no matter what you're faced with. And, that's where we need to think about how we can kind of protect our sense of well being, by realizing there's thousands of great brains that have gone before us, there's thousands of great brains that will go beyond us. And it's our job to kind of gather what we need and leave the rest. Gather what you need out of life. Make sure you're gathering your friendships. Make sure you're gathering the safety you need. Do what you need to do so that you can feel good in life. There's a funny story that reminds me of Epictetus. Is in Calcutta in the 19th century in India, when it was the colonial times, and they were trying to basically imitate English life. And they wanted to be posh in their views, like the English over in Calcutta. And so they designed a golf course, and all the kind of rich people in the area were going to go to the golf course. But they had monkeys in Calcutta, and they didn't have monkeys in England for the golf course. And the monkeys used to rob the golf balls. And so they started to put in some cages for for the monkeys, but the monkeys could climb out of the cages, so that didn't work. And then they built a huge wall around the golf course, and that didn't work. And then they put fruit into the golf course, trying to lure the monkeys away, but that was a complete disaster, because more monkeys came when there was fruit. So finally, in a classic Epictetus kind of turn of events, they decided, no, we're doing it all wrong. We have to play the ball where the monkeys drop it. And that's what we can do in life. It's not about raging against the cards you were dealt in life. It's not about raging against the lack of design, because frankly, there's so many flaws in life it would make your head spin. It's about looking at the cards you're given and trying to get some fun, some happiness, some sense of peace, some sense of contentment, some sense of well-being each day. And if you can do that, there's really nothing stopping you. So to finish the presentation, I would like to remind you of the words Samuel Beckett. It's a lovely quote, and it's a really good way of kind of grappling with the day. And I hope you enjoyed it. Like I say, this is brought to you by Keep Well Tipperary and Tipperary County Council, and it's a campaign brought to you by Healthy Ireland, an initiative of the Government of Ireland with funding from the Healthy Ireland Fund and the Sláinte Care Fund, that's delivered by Pubble. And yeah, the quote that I love by Samuel Beckett is, I've the whole day before me to do right, to do wrong, to give up, to calm down. I've nothing to fear. My ticket is valid for life. I hope you enjoy yourself today. Take care of yourself.